Hey guys, what's going on? So before I start this video, I want to make it very clear I am not a medical professional. I don't claim to be. I only know what I've learned from my personal experience and basically what I've been told by doctors and what I've been reading on the internet, and we all know how true everything on the internet could be. So that's also something you need to be real careful about, is because you don't want to go searching for things and just self-diagnosing yourself all the time. I have a real bad problem with that. I am definitely a severe hypochondriac, if I even said that right. That is me. I'm a very anxious person naturally, and I would use marijuana to help me subdue that anxiety, and as well as nausea that I had on a regular basis already. I have a history up my father's family chain of stomach gastrointestinal issues, all the way up my grandfather, diagnosed with colitis, surgery for it, diagnosed with colon cancer, surgery for it, beat it. My dad is currently dealing with gastrointestinal problems, and he currently has to take acid inhibitor medications and things like that. I myself have somewhat recently been put on a acid inhibitor, which is called pantoprazole, I believe. I'm pronouncing that right. So anyway, I'm gonna try and do this in a proper timeline, but please excuse me if it's extremely unorganized. I am currently going through my withdrawal symptoms. They are at peak times right now, it feels like, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse than this. But if it does, I'll roll with the punches, and I'll try to keep you guys updated and let you know how it goes. So basically, I'm not sure when exactly this all started, so I'll start when I started smoking weed. And I basically started smoking weed when I was a sophomore in high school. I was about 15 years old. And as with pretty much every other kid, I was, one of those guys that was like, oh man, I'm never gonna do drugs, I'm never gonna smoke, I'm never gonna do none of that. I mean, we know how it goes. I was so wrong. And actually, the reason why I started was because I got cheated on in high school. Wow, right? That was what started it. Something that petty. But anyway, so I gave it the chance, I finally was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. At least for that day, I was just in my feelings, So I was like, whatever, my friend offered to smoke me out, because he knew I was feeling blue. And I accepted the offer. I wanted to try it out. I just to try it, one time. I just want to see what it was like. And I loved it. I tried it and I thought it was amazing. This was like my miracle. This is what exactly I needed. I loved it. So I started to do it, often. Like I just felt like this was made for me. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so anyway, so I'm smoking. I start at 15, and obviously I'm still living with my parents at that time, so I wasn't able to smoke like 24/7, but I would, excuse me, sorry about that. I would go to my friend's house before school and smoke up, go to school high, and then I would, get out of school, and oftentimes I'll, come home and kind of like check in with the parents, let them know I'm home, and then I would go out again, and I would go hang out with my friends, and we would all smoke down, and stay out for the night, and yeah. So this continued throughout all of high school. Eventually, in my senior year, actually, I think it was, it might have been in the summer. Yeah, it was the July in that summer after my senior year, I ended up getting caught. I ended up getting pulled over with some stuff on me, and it was a bad time. My parents ended up finding out, of course, and it wasn't good. So I had to detox because I was also enlisting into the Air Force at the time, believe it or not. And I know how irresponsible that sounds of me. I couldn't have made worse decisions, and I still look back on those days with such regret, and I wish I could go back and change it, but it is what it is, this is where I'm at now. And so I started smoking in high school, right? I started detoxing to get in the Air Force, and I kind of got introduced to K2 a little bit, and I did some of that before I ended up going in, just because, I felt like it was, I just thought it was a good workaround. I didn't feel nervous about any harmful effects that it could do to me, despite what people were talking about. I just kind of felt like, oh, that's happening to other people. Nothing's ever gonna happen to me. That's fine. That sucks for them, but I'm good, and I was good. That's how I felt. I was okay. And I kind of ended up keeping my habit for a little longer than I meant to, and I started to feel it like physically affecting me. We would go for runs, and I would, I would run out of breath way sooner than I used to be. And I was a varsity track team when I was in high school, and then I go in the Air Force, and I'm running like 11-minute mile and a halves, like that. Compared to what I used to run, it's just, that was awful to me. I could tell that something was changing, something was happening to me, but I still could not attribute it to what I was doing. I still continued with my habit. Anyway, so I eventually broke the habit, and it took a ton of support from a bunch of my friends, and I actually don't remember entirely how I got over it, but I did, and I think I probably got over it just because it became less available on the market. They kind of popped up in gas stations everywhere, and then, when people started having these attacks, heart attacks or whatever, seizures and stuff from it, they started to classify it as, like a schedule, whatever, they started taking it out of the shops. So I didn't do that anymore. I stopped. And I had seen several people have seizures on this too, like, including, just, they would hit the bowl, and then I would just watch their eyes roll back, and they would just, boom, hit the floor, and then, start just, convulsing. And that is the scariest shit to me. That scared the hell out of me each time that I saw it. And I saw it maybe 3 times, I believe. And I've also seen it several times on people ripping dabs. And it's scary then, too. So I broke this K2 habit, and I had stomach issues that caused me to separate from the Air Force early. So as soon as I did that, I went right back to smoking weed. I immediately, I think that day that I discharged, I went back with the girl that I was dating at the time, and we ended up smoking a blunt with, a concentrated worm on it, a little bit of wax mixed in, and I was gone. But I missed it. I felt like, yes, I'm back. This is what I need. This is my medicine. So since then, I've pretty much been smoking since then, which is I'm 25 now, so I've pretty much been smoking for about 10 years, minus that small break of about 2 years where I was in the military shortly. And up until about, I was living in Florida, and man, because of the stomach problems I got in my family history, I just, I started to feel nauseous, in the mornings and stuff. And I'm not really sure when they started to come on. I just know that at some point, within the last year, maybe 2, I would wake up every single morning, and I would feel nauseous until I got into the shower and started to get going. And I would wake up, and if I could, I would hit the bowl, jump in the shower, get out, hit the bowl again, because that was my medicine to fix my nausea, like anyone else. Because it had always worked. Always. Almost always, unless it was food poisoning. But if it was mild nausea, I could almost guarantee that it would go away with weed. And nothing was anywhere near as effective as marijuana. So, yeah, within the last year, 2 years, 3 years or so, sorry, that's such a wide range, I started to just feel nauseous all the time. And it wasn't that bad to where I had to go to the hospital or anything. I just kind of noticed it and thought, man, my stomach sucks. I'm gonna have to go get this checked out eventually. But yeah, so I like I said, I always just ended up thinking that it was for my family medical history, you know. But about 3 or 4 months ago, I was introduced to the tanks, you know, the concentrated THC vape pens that have been coming out more and more recently. I finally got introduced to those, and this is long after I'd been introduced to dabs already. You know, I'd done a bunch of dabs. I kind of got out of the habit of doing dabs because they weren't available after a certain period of time where I moved away and I just couldn't find it. So I would only smoke bud, but I did do dabs quite a bit before then. Anyway, sorry, I'm not trying to get all scrambled. I did warn you this video would be a little unorganized. But anyway, let's see. So I got introduced to those pens, and that was like a miracle. That was like a miracle to me, you know. It was so cool because it didn't smell like bud really. I guess like it had the slightest scent. But man, was it concentrated. And another thing is, you don't know what all is in there. It could be mixed with stuff, and if you do your research, you will see that there are counterfeits coming out on the market these days that, like, they are being caught now. Many of these vape pens that are being tested are being caught with, you know, these harmful things like pesticides and all kinds of craziness that I can't even begin to get into. I don't know enough. But even Exhibit got arrested for selling, you know, the same thing that was, it tested positive for pesticides in his concentrates. And I always looked up to Exhibit, man. Like, I thought, not like completely, but like I liked him, you know. Pimp My Ride back in the day, I used to watch that. I like Exhibit, or I did, but I lost so much respect for that rapper as soon as I saw that, man. That's just because that's murder in my eyes, you know. You're hurting people. That's poison. You're poisoning people, and they're not aware of it, you know, for your personal gain, you know, for monetary gain. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to get sidetracked. So anyway, I got introduced to the pens, and I started using them pretty often, as often as I could, because I could take, you know, it's so portable. You know, I'd be hitting it at home in the morning, on the way to work, at work, on the way home from work. It doesn't matter. Like, all night long after work, if I had obligations, I would still smoke. It didn't matter because I felt like I did not function properly without being high. I aimed to be high 24/7. That was me, you know. Like, this shit was like my religion. That's just how, and I still kind of feel that way. And like, I mean, it's tough, man. I'm fighting it. I'm fighting so hard to stay away. And I mean, that's just what you got to do. You got to stay strong. Like, you will get through it. And I mean, that's how I'm pulling myself through. I know that I'm gonna get through this if I just keep pulling on, man. And I mean, every one of you, if you're suffering from this, like, you can do the same. I promise you, you can do it. Anyway, sorry. Let's see. So I'm hitting the pens, and this becomes a regular habit. I begin to come to a place where I start to make a little bit better money. So I started to stock up on the pens, you know, and I would kind of started, man, I would smoke the pens like crazy. And in between, I would still smoke bud too. So like, and sometimes I would do some weird shit. Like, I would hit the pen, hold the hit in, like hit the bowl, and then like let it out, or, you know, shit like that. Just because I just wanted to get as high as possible all the time. And I remember there was one night in particular, and I think this is like the very night where I felt like my life really changed for the worse because of marijuana. Although I wasn't completely aware at the time, I thought I had food poisoning. But anyway, so that night, I was up. I pretty much pulled an all-nighter playing video games on the computer. And when I do that, I smoke a lot. You know, it's almost like my fidget. I kind of just, like, in between, in all the breaks in between action, you know, where you can kind of bring your hands away, I would hit the pipe, or I would hit the pen, or both. And I remember that night, I probably smoked half of that tank. I mean, and those tanks were real concentrated with THC. Like, there was a huge saturation level of THC with that. And, I mean, back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s and 90s or whatever, from all my research at least, I mean, weed was nowhere near as potent back then as it is today. I mean, not even close. I think the average THC percentage of or the potency of weed these days is like 18.7%. And don't quote me on that. Do your research. Please double check me and correct me if I'm wrong. But it was like something like 18 point something percent, as opposed to the like 6% that it was back in the day when our parents were using it. That's why why CHS hasn't really been recognized until recently. I think 2004 was what I read to be the first clinical discovery of CHS, or diagnosis of CHS, being due to marijuana. Now, before this, I'm sure people are being misdiagnosed with cyclic vomiting syndrome, which is very similar, minus it is not caused by cannabis. CHS is absolutely cannabis related. It is 100% THC. It could have something to do with the rest of the chemicals. I know there's tons of other chemicals in it. And I know what you're thinking is a lot of people think that pesticides are also the main problem, and maybe it is, but there's still cases where people have grown their own stuff, clean of pesticides and still suffer. And so that leads me to believe more so that it really is THC causing this problem. I really am starting to believe the research, but I had been ignorant for so long. I had been ignorant for so long, about 10 years plus, that I just refused to believe that weed was bad. I always believed it was like one of the few good things that I had, in my arsenal against anything: depression, anxiety, boredom, insomnia, anything, anxiety. It didn't matter. It helped me. I enjoyed it. So that night, anyway, I smoked a ton, and I woke up the next morning, and I probably woke up around 7 a.m. and that was after I pulled an all-nighter. Like, I probably slept for 1 or 2 hours, and I woke up, and my heart was racing, and I felt like something was wrong, and like I just felt so on edge for no reason. And I got out of bed, my girlfriend was still asleep, and I just started pacing the house because I couldn't figure out why I felt that way. I just felt really, really on edge, like something was happening. And I kind of started to feel a little dizzy. And then next thing you know, I started getting real nauseous. And I go to the bathroom, and man, I start puking. And I just thought I had food poisoning because the night before we had cooked with chicken, and I just, I couldn't attribute my sickness to anything else, so I just assumed maybe somehow something we did about the preparation of the food that we made last night was improper or not healthy, or wasn't sanitary enough, and that I caught food poisoning. And I already had like a weak stomach, so I just thought, damn, food poisoning. Anyways, I was trying not to go to the hospital, and then I got so bad that like I started to feel, and this mixed in with a panic attack, and I started to feel my stomach, after puking so much, my stomach was like completely like static, like when you turn your TV on and you don't have cable, and it's just like that black and white static, sorry. That's kind of how I could best describe my stomach to feel. That's how that's how I would say it felt. And I don't know, I started getting real nervous because I started feeling more and more numb, and it started to kind of come over my whole body. It started to go to my arms, to the point where like my hand, the muscle control in my hands, like my hands kind of just started cramping into this weird, like, man, it was weird. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but like my body just kind of stopped giving me control of my muscles, like I just kind of started going numb all over. And I do think a lot of that was attributed to a panic attack, because I already am an anxious person to begin with. Excuse me. And it got so bad that I ended up having to go to the emergency room. And so I got my girlfriend, we got our things, and I was like, I gotta go. And I brought a bag with me because I was puking so much. And even at the ER, my muscle control got so bad that I almost couldn't even walk in. And my face was numb, I could hardly control my mouth, my lips, my cheeks felt like they were like twitching right here. And like I just felt like that spring, like static feeling all on my face and my hands and my arms and my stomach. And so I go to the ER, and I feel so bad that I literally walk in there and my hands are like this, and I'm just like, help, I need help, and like, because I didn't know what to do, and I was scared. I'm not gonna lie to you, like, I was scared to death, because I didn't know what was happening to me. Like, I had never experienced food poisoning as bad as that, and I truly believed that I had been food poisoned. Like, I really did believe that. So I go to the hospital, I go to that emergency room, and they sit me down, they stick me with an IV, and they start pumping. They said I'm real dehydrated. They got me to do some breathing exercises to try to calm down. They pumped me with some Ativan, hydration fluids, and like Zofran for nausea, which did next to nothing. And I think they gave me like promethazine, which did next to nothing. I mean, the only thing that kind of had an effect was probably the Ativan, just for my panic attack. For the nausea, though, it stayed. Even while they were asking me questions, talking to me, I had a bag in my hand, and like I was puking, and I didn't even have anything left to puke. Like, it was just coming up bile. That's all I had, and I was still puking to the point where I didn't even like have that. I was just gagging on. I was dry heaving, nothing, and that's the worst feeling. So they run their labs. They run a bunch of labs. They start taking tests. They take my blood. They take my urine. They take all kinds of stuff. And I'm there for a while. And they ended up discharging me with, I think, just panic attacks or anxiety or something like that. And I thought I was good. So I think within that same week, I ended up going back to the ER for the same symptoms. Like, it kept happening. Because that day I got discharged, I went home and I lit up. Because why wouldn't I? I felt nauseous in the hospital. None of their medications were working. The only medication that I always knew to help my nausea was weed. So I got home and I lit up. And I hit the pen, which is concentrated some more. I just continued to just increase the THC levels in my body without realizing that it was harming me. And truly believing that it was my fix. It was a tool for me. So, yeah, I go home and I light up, and I kind of experience the same symptoms, and I end up going to the ER again, I think, like, the next day. And they're like, damn, dude, like, you were here already. You need to learn how to cope with anxiety. And I was, like, insistent that, like, there's something wrong with my stomach, like, because it had the worst pain, alongside with the nausea. Like, it was so painful, like, absolutely intolerable pain. Like, I couldn't handle it. I didn't know how to cope. It was the hardest pain I've ever had to deal with. And so, like, I went there just man, like, damn near in tears, asking for help. Like, I needed them to do something for me because I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how to fix it, and I felt so bad that I just needed it to go away. And so they ran more tests on me, pretty much the same things. They stuck me with IVs, they rehydrated me, they gave me Zofran, they gave me Ativan, they took my blood again, they took my urine again, and it was all the same results. It came down to the same thing. And I ended up, I think within that same week, because I did the exact same thing where I went home and lit up, and I just was so convinced that it had something to do with the food that I was eating or the way I was preparing my food or something. So, like, I was extra careful about handling my food. But then it kept happening, or it happened again. And for the third time, I had to go to the emergency room in like a week. And they were just like, I mean, they had seen me, a few times now. So they were like, man, what is going on with you? So they were like, okay, we're going to run a CAT scan on your abdomen and see if, because of my family history, see if there's anything going on there, like an ulcer, any signs of cancer, anything like that, because I do have a family history of cancer, and I was legitimately worried that it could be that. So they ran the CAT scan, and it came back fine. Everything was fine. Everything looked good. And so one of the doctors pulls me aside, and they're like, you need to quit smoking marijuana. That's what's causing this. And she went on to try to explain cyclic vomiting syndrome and how it can be specific to marijuana. And I remember I literally argued with her, like, I literally said, I think you're wrong. Like, I really don't believe that it's the weed. I really don't think it's that. I think it's something else. Like, I truly believe it's something else. Like, I feel like there's something that they're not catching. And I really did believe that. So I went home and did the exact same thing. And this lasted, like, the pain, the nausea, like, the feeling, like, that whole episode lasted for maybe a month and a half to 2 months. And damn, that was tough. That was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. That was the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my entire life. I cannot stress that enough. And I had been to survival school in the military and everything. This was the worst experience ever for me. You know, nothing compared. Nothing. I truly felt like I was suffering, and it sent me into a depression, you know, and I was also having panic attacks because I was so worried about how I was, like, if I was gonna die, you know, like, if I was, like, what's happening to me, if I had cancer, if I'm, like, not getting the right, because I couldn't eat or drink, you know, like, I was trying so hard to keep things down, but, like, it was tough, you know, just to try to even take a couple sips of water to, you know, eat a couple crackers, like, your appetite is gone. Food just sounds disgusting. It makes you feel more nauseous. And on top of that, I would feel worse pain after I'd eat, you know? So that made me real nervous about eating because I would know shortly after eating that I would feel so bad. And I would anticipate that every time I'd eat. And a lot of times that would send me into a really bad panic attack. And I'm talking the same thing where I ended up going to the ER, like where the tingle, the spring feeling kind of goes through my whole body. And luckily, I was in the process of moving between states, and I had to stay with my mom for about a month in between that time frame while I got my new apartment in this current state set up. So my girlfriend and I were staying with my mom for about a month, and the majority of my symptoms were there at her house, where I wasn't able to smoke nearly as much. So I slowly started to recover, man. Like, I was taking this supplement called Hemohim, I think it's called. It's from, like, Korea, and it's got, like, shit, I don't know what's got in it, but my mom swore by it, and she paid, like, $100 for a box of it. I don't know. It's supposed to be good for your stomach. Do your research. I don't know. I didn't take it as regularly as I guess you're supposed to, or she expected me to. But I also took multivitamins. I tried Manuka honey, I tried ginger, I tried peppermint, you know, oils that I'd rub on my stomach. I tried everything, soups, like, it was just tough. Like, I tried it all, I felt. And, but I slowly recovered. I started to go to class, and like I said, I was at my mom's, so I wasn't able to really smoke much. I was actually really only to smoke maybe, like, a couple hits of a one-hitter, you know, like, at night, and I really mean, like, late at night, and that would make me feel temporarily kind of better, but then I would wake up the next morning feeling, you know, the symptoms again, most often worse than the day before, you know, like, and I would just, man, it would put me in tears, you know. I'd be just complaining, like, why won't this go away? Like, why do I have to suffer for this long? What do I have to do to make it stop? So I ended up seeing a primary care provider, and I did not have insurance at the time, which is why I was not able to see one earlier than I did, but I ended up finally seeing a primary care provider, and he suggested that I had gastroenteritis or an ulcer. And that made sense to me because the pain in my stomach was so bad. And that was when he prescribed me the acid inhibitor pantoprazole. I can't remember what its other name is. Sorry. So that's when he did prescribe me that. And he gave me, I believe, hydroxyzine 25 milligram and promethazine. I don't remember the dosage of the promethazine. I'm sorry. And I think that was it. So I kind of stayed on this routine of taking my promethazine and Zofran. That's right. He prescribed me Zofran for nausea, promethazine for nausea, pantoprazole for acid inhibitor, and hydroxyzine for the anxiety, which doesn't do too well for me, but it's better than nothing. I am currently on hydroxyzine again right now, and I'm still very anxious. So anyway, so I go to the, or I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. So yeah, I start to recover. I'm a full-time student by this time, and I think by the second week of school, I started to feel a little better. Because for the first week or so, I sat in class just hoping and praying that the instructor didn't want me to do anything that would draw attention to me, or have to, like, do my introductions, because I felt like if I spoke a word, I would puke. I felt like even just sitting there, I was like, damn, I'm gonna puke. Like, and I would, like, imagine my routes out of the classroom, how I would just, have to leave, because I was anticipating myself having to just leave the class to go throw up immediately, because that's how close to vomiting my nausea felt. It was so strong that I just constantly, I couldn't even focus on anything but trying not to puke. And by the way, I'm probably going to get a little graphic with details pretty soon here, so if you guys are not cool with that, you might want to go to another video or something. But anyways, I start to recover, and I still, at this point, am believing that I was just recovering from an ulcer, and I'm also convinced at this point that it was like ulcerative colitis, because my grandfather had it, and it just made sense that it would be ulcerative colitis, or that it was just starting. And yeah, I don't know. I ended up moving into my new apartment, and I picked smoking back up as regularly, if not more so, than I was when I was living with my mom in that previous month. So I started to smoke much more often. I started to come into more money, and I started to, come into more tanks, for the vape pens, and as well as getting a hold of, edibles and stuff. And I would eat, and like when I got these edibles, like I would test myself. You know how they say you're not supposed to eat too many brownies and shit? Like, nah, I would do that because I wanted to get higher than I was getting, like I wasn't able to get the same high as I used to get back in sophomore year, obviously, because my tolerance, has just built and built and built. And so, like, I just felt, because my tolerance was so damn high, that I had to constantly, go and smoke more, or intake more THC into my system some way, somehow. And let's rewind about 2 weeks from today. I was still waking up every morning feeling real nauseous, and I started to attribute it to eating so late at night, because I would eat in the middle of the night and then go right to bed. And I knew that wasn't good for me, but I had the munchies, and I just have poor self-control, and that's just what would happen. So I got my hands eventually on a bunch of tanks. I got some edibles, and I ate a bunch of the edibles, and I hit the tanks, and I hit the flower, and I was putting THC. I was just flooding my body with THC. And I didn't think anything of it, I was just trying to get high. And and a lot of times it kind of got to the point where I was just like self-medicating my nausea, like I was just trying to like, if I felt nauseous, that means like I need to redose, I need to smoke back up, because like once I start coming down, the nausea starts coming back. Like I felt bad, and like it just kind of was this vicious cycle. And let's see, about a week and a half ago, I think, I ended up going to the urgent care, because I still do not have insurance at this time. I went to an urgent care center out of my own pocket, and I was having a real severe panic attack, and I was trying to I was concerned about so many different things. Like I'm such a hypochondriac that, like, I could go on Google and read about any kind of cancer and be like, wow, those symptoms relate to me. I feel like that might be me. I'm so bad about that, and I'm trying to not be. But like, one of the biggest things, if you are suffering from panic attacks, like, don't use Google Doctor. Don't self-diagnose yourself. Trust your doctor. Talk to him. Be honest with him about everything that you're feeling, what your symptoms are, and he will get you to where you need to be, or she. They will get you to where you need to be. Just have faith in that. You know, be as descriptive. You know, keep a log of your symptoms if you're not feeling well, and so that like the more information that you have available for them, the more that they have to work with to make you better faster. So when I went to the ER, I did admit that I was a chronic marijuana user, you know, because I wanted them. Because I even had suspicions that it could have been the marijuana, you know, like that it was laced or something, like because I didn't know. I really truly didn't know what was going on with me, and I did admit to them that it was a possibility that it could be something like that. So anyway, I'm sorry. I go to the urgent care for that panic attack, and he kind of prescribes me. He gave me Paxil for like an antidepressant, and I took that for one night, and it was like, nope, not for me. It didn't do, and I know those kinds of medications don't work for several weeks, but I just felt so bad on it just that first night. I didn't want to do it anymore. I couldn't, you know, like, just sorry. I'm gonna have to switch to something different if you want me on antidepressants. And you know, I had access to some Ativan that was the main source of my main source of you know, help for alleviating my symptoms of nausea and my panic attacks, because my panic attacks were really through the roof, and they were really long, you know, prolonged throughout the entire day. Almost every single day I would have a panic attack. And previously, you know, before that one day where I thought I had food poisoning and went to the ER, I never experienced panic attacks. And to this day, I experience panic attacks nearly on a daily basis. And I think, and I just wasn't aware that it was probably the THC flooding my system that was causing it when I was trying to self-medicate it with the THC. So anyways, let's see. I go to the urgent care. He gives me Paxil. It doesn't work. I don't like it, and I ended up going to the ER the next day or the second day after, so something like that. And I went there. Oh man, I was in a really terrible place. I had begun vomiting. I had told my girlfriend I started to feel real off, like I didn't feel well, something felt wrong, and I started feeling real sick. And then I eventually went to the bathroom, and like there were many times when I went to the bathroom thinking I was gonna throw up, and I just kind of sit there and just be on the edge of throwing up, but not actually throw up. But this night, I started throwing up, and I mean it, like I was throwing up so bad, it was so strong, it was so severe. And it was like I didn't have any food already in my stomach because my appetite was gone, so it was nothing but bile, you know, yellow. And here I come Googling, you know, when I need to see a doctor, if my vomit's this and that, and of course everything's like alarming to me, you know. When I look it up, it's like if you are, you know, throwing up, you're at risk of kidney failure and all these things. So I was legitimately afraid that these issues that I'm having were, you know, and I do understand how irrational it sounds, but like I started to fear for my life. You know, I started to wonder, what if my kidneys fail? Like, what if something goes wrong, or what if something is happening to me that ends up being fatal? What if I have cancer? You know, what if this and that? And you know, I don't know. I really had no idea. I was just really worried that something was killing me. Like there's some underlying health condition that was killing me that the doctors weren't seeing and that I wasn't able to properly describe, you know, to them. So yeah, I went to the ER that first time, and I lost my muscle control so bad that I started to kind of fade out while I was in the car on the way to the hospital. And luckily I only live about 10 or 15 minutes away or so. And it was real bad. Like I was like flicking my hands everywhere because I didn't know how to cope. I was flicking my head side to side, like my tongue was flicking out of my mouth. Like I don't know what I was doing, but like I just felt so bad that it was like my body was just doing its own thing, you know? And I kind of felt like I was starting to pass out. I could hardly even speak anymore because my face was so stiff that I was like telling my girlfriend, go in there, say, we need a stretcher right now, and they need to pull me in. And so she pulled up to the emergency room doors, and this man comes out, and I immediately am like, help, like, please, I need help. And I could hardly even get that out. And so they try to get me into the wheelchair, and I can hardly even step out of the car and to get into the wheelchair. And they check me in, they sign me in. I go into the triage room, and I explain my symptoms, and I mean like everything. They asked me if I smoke. I said yes. I did stretch it a little bit and say that I smoked less than I really was, because I didn't want them to just be like, oh, well, you're smoking this much every single day. Yeah, that's probably the problem, because I truly believe like that it wasn't, you know, and that every doctor was just gonna attribute my problems to the weed wrongly, when I truly believe that it was some other health condition not having to do with any drugs or weed or whatever, because that was my only medicine that, you know, gave me true effects. But I go to the emergency room in the state, and they do the same thing that the ER did, you know, in Florida several months previously. You know, they took blood, they took my urine, they did a CAT scan, they did all this stuff, and they come back and they're like, there's really not a whole lot wrong with you. You are spilling a little bit of protein from your urine, you know, in your urine, and that has to do with dehydration, as well as your ketone levels are a little high. And it wasn't until later that I learned that Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome, or CHS, tends to have higher ketone levels when labs are run. So that just kind of added to you know, to the suspicion. But they ran all these tests, they ran the CAT scan, they did all these things, and aside from these minor things, you know, I was pretty good, you know, like everything checked out. Like they didn't see anything wrong with me. And so at this point, and they tried to give me things, like they gave me Onacent or Zofran, and, you know, all the same shit that they did the ER out of state. And so the doctor comes back in eventually after hours and hours of being in the ER, and he says, all right, look, you have something called Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome. This is a new thing, and the real only treatment is to completely stop smoking. And so at this point, I like had an official name, and I started to take this to heart, because now like I had it, you know, it was a recurring episode. This was the second time that like I thought I was done with like the worst part of my life already. No, I was cycled right back into this the worst part of my life. You know, it just happened again. And so I was more open to the idea that maybe it was the cannabis, you know, especially after the way that he told me. He was very confident, and they'd been seeing, you know, these cases more and more often in the recent years, especially with the opening of or with the legalizing of marijuana recreationally and medically in many more states. You know, cases, I mean, Colorado pretty much doubled their cases in the ER for CHS. So I go home, and I still ended up hitting the pipe once, I believe, or twice, because I just felt so nauseous, and that's just what I was used to for like a decade on fixing myself. And I just felt bad. I just felt real bad. And the next morning I woke up real sick, real nauseous, real anxious, panic attack, everything, full-blown force. It was happening, and I ended up going to the ER again, I think the next night, because my symptoms were not going away. I went into the ER that next night, or I believe it was the day after. Like I had gone to the ER, and then I had a day where I was not okay, but I didn't go to the ER. And then the very next day, I did go to the ER, because I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I know panic attacks have that symptom, but for some reason I couldn't shake it. I was like, I can't get a full breath, and I'm freaking out. Like, I need to get to the hospital. So we get there, and she starts running, you know, tests, and my BPM is like, damn, it's at like 170, which is real fucking high. And I mean, their machine's like beeping because my damn heart was beating way too fast because of my panic attack. So they had to give me a respirator to try to slow my breathing, but it didn't do a whole lot. They did not IV me this time. They kind of just gave me my panic attack was not subsiding with the breathing through the respirator or the doctor trying to talk me through my breathing exercises. It wasn't happening. It wasn't going away. My mindset was on it, but it wasn't going away. So he ended up getting another doctor, and I believe he was probably his superior, he seemed. And he came and gave me a shot in my right bicep, or in my on my right arm, right into the muscle, of some Ativan. And I don't know how big of a dose he gave me, but it must have been a big dose, because, man, it hit me hard that night. And I felt pretty good that night. I was actually able to eat a small bowl of ramen, actually, for the, the most food that I had had in like a week, 2 weeks or so. I mean, and I've lost like 11, 12 pounds just in this episode that I've experienced now. So currently my position is I finally stopped. I did break the day after I went to the ER, and I took a hit out of the bowl in the morning because I felt so bad and I didn't know what to do. And the moment I inhaled, I was like, damn, I messed up. I shouldn't have done this. Like, I knew that was the problem, and I did it anyway. And lo and behold, it hit me again, like it happened. I did it to myself, and I knew. So at this point, I was like, okay, now I truly believe it is this thing that he said it was, this cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. It's this, I'm convinced. You got me. And so the last time that I hit weed was about 56 hours ago or so. I think that was the last time I hit a bowl, and I hit it like hardly like once. And that was it. I put it down since then, and I have been withdrawing really hard. I definitely have no appetite still. I have sleeping issues. My energy levels are just wrecked. I feel exhausted 24/7. My anxiety, my panic attacks are happening, and I'm just, I'm trying to work through this. And I do slowly feel like my symptoms are starting to alleviate. Now, I do still feel every morning when I'm waking up, that's when I feel at my worst. I wake up, and a lot of times I'll Google why I feel so damn nauseous in the morning, and all the Google search results always come to pregnant women. And I'm like, damn, that is not me. I'm not a pregnant woman. Why can't I find anything else on nausea in the morning for anything besides, like, that? Anyway, so I stopped smoking finally, and oh man, the cravings, the cravings are crazy. Like, there are times where I'm just like, all I can think about is like smoking a bowl. Like, I want to go back to my bowl, pack it up, and just hit it. And there are many times when I considered doing it, and I just had to tell myself, this is the thing that's hurting you. If you do it, you're just going to go through it again. And that's just really what you got to tell yourself. It's the hardest thing that you'll probably have to do. And some people will say that marijuana is nothing compared to heroin or meth withdrawals and everything. And sure, that's probably true. But I've never done those hard drugs, and I don't have experiences with those. All I have experience with is marijuana. And man, this is the hardest thing that I've ever had to give up in my entire life. These withdrawal symptoms are so severe that I would personally compare it to hard drugs. Like, I don't have any experience with that. So I'm probably wrong. I know about dope sickness. I know you can really physically be harmed by quitting cold turkey on hard drugs. But man, I'm sorry. Personally, for me, in my personal experience, this is just one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I still have cravings, even right now. Like, I want to go pack my bowl and hit it real bad. And I feel nauseous. I feel like a panic attack's coming on. I feel like things are wrong with me. I keep wanting to Google things, thinking like I'm dying to like these conditions, or just, who knows what. Just things that are wrong with me. I just felt like something was happening. I just felt like I'm not okay. In the recent few days, I've kind of been trying to get down. My girlfriend brought me some Ensure drinks and Gatorade and some chicken broth. And so basically my diet as of lately has been to drink a lot of water, although I probably haven't been drinking as much water as I should be, and sipping on Gatorade to maintain your electrolyte levels, because you don't want to let those, you don't want to become electrolyte imbalanced. That's very, very bad. probably end up in the hospital for that. I was taking a tablespoon of Manuka honey every day, and multivitamins, and trying to sip on Ensure. And I mean, like, that first day out, I had minimal. I probably had like one sip of my Ensure drink, and then another sip of a strawberry banana smoothie drink from Walmart, like those Bolt House Farms little drinks that you find in the refrigerated section. Anyway, so it's been about 3 days since I've last smoked weed, and it has slightly let up since my episode, but I do mean slightly. Like, I still feel bad, and I can't tell. It's hard for me to distinguish between, the CHS symptoms and withdrawal symptoms, like, because my sleep's messed up. And my sleep schedule's still messed up. My appetite's still messed up. I'm feeling nauseous considerably less, but it still does hit me, throughout the day, especially in the morning. It does hit me pretty hard. And my panic attacks are still coming on pretty strong, but everything is just slightly less severe than it was a few days ago. And I'm trying to hold on to that. I'm trying to not, trying to really stay away from the bowl, because I know I'm just going to send myself spiraling right back into that hole if I do. And it's not worth it, If you've never experienced it, I pray to God that you do not experience it ever. I really, truly hope that nobody else, unnecessarily has to deal with this. And if you do, talk to your doctor. Please be honest about your consumption, because you may be skeptical, but it's a thing. It's real, I was skeptical for so long, years and years, that I've been using this with no problems, and all of a sudden I have problems because of it. Yeah, right. But now I really believe it. I really, truly believe it. And I really think that cessation of marijuana is the solution until more research can come out to support, medication that can actually be effective for it, since nausea, antiemetics don't really work for this, for this type of illness. Anyway, so this is where I'm at. I'm definitely still withdrawing. I feel terrible. I'm pushing through. My nausea is starting to kind of alleviate. Like, last night I was able to play video games, and man, I haven't even been able to do that because I can't concentrate on anything but how sick I feel. And I was able to play some video games. I woke up again this morning feeling, as I was laying there, the moment I opened my eyes, I didn't feel too bad. I had some crazy fucking dreams, real vivid, scary dreams. Like, and you're probably gonna have nightmares when you're withdrawing from weed. That I knew, because I had experienced it before. But I had some nightmares. I woke up, I had anxiety, but I didn't feel too nauseous. When I sat up, I felt nauseous. Immediately I got up and I took a sip of water, and then I took 50 milligrams of hydroxyzine. I took a Zofran to dissolve on my tongue, and I took one of my promethazine. I was also prescribed Bentyl for pain, although during this episode I really wasn't feeling as much of the stomach pain that I felt the first episode. It was mostly my nausea that I was experiencing and panic attacks or anxiety that were the two main prevalent factors in how I was feeling. So this morning I woke up and I took that medicine, and I feel still anxious for sure. Before I started the video, I was even feeling on the edge of a panic attack, but I think even just recording this video is kind of bringing me down from that. And I definitely am having a hard time with my appetite. It's hard for me to get things down. Although last night, my appetite did come back momentarily, and I was able to eat some crackers with some boiled chicken broth on the pot. And I think I had, and I ate some dumplings, which is like, whoa, I mean, just solid food, holy shit. Like, I was able to get something down like that. And so throughout both episodes, by the way, I had pretty bad diarrhea too. And I mean, like, and I'm sorry this is so gross, but I mean, like, it was like I was shitting out snot, like, legit. Like, it was like dark snot, and it was gross. I mean, I was so concerned of how it looked that I took pictures in case I had to show my doctor, you know, like, and I'm sorry that's gross, but, you know, I was desperate. I was real desperate to know what was going on with me, and still, you know, I mean, I just still kind of want to know more. You know, I wish there was more research. You know, research is kind of being discovered as we are coming along with it. Like, we are basically the first generation to suffer from this, you know, recent illness, just because it's, you know, potency nowadays is just shooting through the roof. You know, it's going up and up. Everyone just wants to get higher and higher. You know, that's all it's about. And I just wanted to make this video so that you guys can have someone to relate to. If you are experiencing these symptoms, you can fight through it. I'm fighting through it with you. You know, and if you have any questions, please ask me in the comment section below. You know, I'm here to support you no matter what. You know, I feel that everyone as a community, or in this community that suffers from CHS, needs to come together and, you know, share their experiences, you know, kind of get it together so that we can all, you know, kind of gather what we have in common, and maybe further, you know, research to kind of speed up the process, and maybe get some medications going or some kind of treatment other than complete cessation of weed. Because even right now, I have no idea how I'm gonna make it through the rest of my life without weed. I don't know if I am gonna make that. I mean, I probably will end up smoking again, honestly, because my self-control is just so bad, and I am very impulsive. And when I'm not feeling bad in the moment, you know, I will make those decisions, and it's unfortunate, but it's, you know, it's me. So yeah, anyways, like I said, I just want to bring you guys together. I just want to talk about my personal experience, you know, what I have kind of learned through this, you know, all of this suffering, and I really will call it suffering, because that's how I feel. And I'm sure if you're experiencing it too, you would completely agree with me that it is absolute pure suffering. I mean, there are few things that are worse than the feelings of CHS symptoms, or CVS symptoms even, because they are basically the same thing, give or take the cannabis, or cannabis use, sorry. I think that I'm gonna try as hard as I can to do a regular log of how I'm doing, and I'll try to update this channel, you know, as often as I can, if not daily, on how I'm, you know, experiencing these symptoms, on how I'm coping and how I'm recovering, so that you guys have something to relate to, and that you guys can have some hope that if you're suffering, that you know that you can get better, and that you're watching me recover, knowing that you can do the same. Because if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I have the worst self-control. I'm the epitome of, like, just bad decisions, man. I really am. So if you have any questions, if you want to talk, you know, about it, or if you want to share your experience as well, or how you cope, your mechanisms, you know, put it in the comments, you know, subscribe to the channel if you want, you know, get updates on the videos that I start putting out. I'm so sorry that this is a very, very long video, a very long explanation. I feel like an hour was pretty necessary to explain my entire personal experience. I did not write anything down beforehand, and I am extremely scatterbrained right now because I am so withdrawn from marijuana. So I'm sorry that it's so unorganized, and I'm sure I left things out. Just remember, try not to take too many hot showers, because for one, that can be bad for you. That can still dehydrate you and cause you to sweat. And if you're not giving yourself the proper amount of fluids, I mean, that is going to cause you to feel a little worse, because you're not hydrating yourself. And you may not believe it, or you may not think that it's happening, but showering is also going to be dehydrating you, especially if you're taking like the really hot showers, because that's what most people feel alleviates their symptoms. Another thing I can recommend that I used briefly, and it kind of works sometimes and other times it didn't, and several times it just burned real bad, but capsaicin cream. It's basically the chemical that's found in like hot peppers and chilies and things. You know, it's what makes you hurt when you eat spicy food. There's a topical cream that you can buy at like Walmart or Walgreens or wherever. You can go and you know, rub it. You want to spread it kind of around like where your belly button is, kind of maybe like your lower abdomen and around your belly button, or at least that's where I put it. You might want to get gloves. You don't want to touch your genitals or friggin' eyes and shit, you know. Don't be trying to friggin' jerk off within an hour. It does, you know, even if you wash your hands, I would suggest gloves, because even after I wash my hands thoroughly, I touched certain areas that hurt like a bitch for a good 20 minutes, that burned and burned where you don't want it to burn. I experienced that, along with my nausea, along with my anxiety. Everything was just piled on top of each other, and it was the worst. It still is terrible, but it is, you know, it is slightly better than it was before, and I know that is leading to recovery. You know, like, there is a difference from when I felt, or how I felt several days ago, and there's a difference from how I felt several months ago. So again, I'll try to keep you updated. I'll try to update this channel daily if I can, and how I'm feeling and how I'm doing. And if you guys just want to follow me on this journey, you know, and spread awareness of CHS, because people are so skeptical that cannabis can be bad or have any kind of harmful effects, please spread the word. People are going to be skeptical. I know that for years coming, people are going to be skeptical, but this is a rising problem, and it is rising at a very fast rate. You know, these cases are going to be more and more and more prevalent in the future with all the legalization. You know, it's just going to continue to happen. So if we start to raise awareness early, you know, if we start now, or I guess we've already started, but if we really push awareness for this, we can get that research going, you know. And if these videos even make any kind of success, maybe we'll even start like a GoFundMe directly for CHS and CVS research, because nobody deserves to suffer from this, you know. I wouldn't want my worst enemy to feel like this. It's just not something that I believe anyone should have to suffer from. And if we can prevent any more of these cases, then, you know, I would like to. I would definitely do whatever I gotta do to try to get, you know, the information out there, to spread the word, to make people more aware of their cannabis usage and the possibility of CHS developing, and that it could happen to anyone, you know. I mean, it just depends on the person you are. We don't know enough to determine who it's going to affect, and, you know, why it does it, and why it happens when it happens. And I mean, there's like some information, I guess people have talked about, like something like with the receptors, like kind of doing a paradoxical, I don't know, man. Like, you'll read all kinds of shit on the internet. If you're suffering from this, I'm sure you're going to read on the internet. Please be careful. Don't self-diagnose. Don't get too scared. Please rehydrate yourself. Feed yourself if you can. Try to get things down. If you can't get solid food down, get broth, clear liquid diets, you know, water, Gatorade. Try to stay away from like orange or citrusy things, because those aren't going to be good for you either. I use just water, you know, blue Gatorade, water, and then I also have an Ensure drink to try to, you know, keep my nutrients up, because I'm not trying to wither away. So if you guys are suffering from this, best of luck. If you've watched all of this, wow, thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Keep your head up if you're suffering. If you know someone that's suffering, pass this along to them. Share this with your friends. Share the information along. Share the coping mechanisms, you know, talk to the doctors. And we're going to get through this together as a community. And thanks for watching. If you have anything else to ask me, just put it down in the comments below. Give it a like, or subscribe to my channel if you want more. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with an update.